Tayana Davis had destroyed men in courtrooms for less than what she was looking at on her phone screen. She sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Madison Tower, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city she'd conquered through sheer brilliance and relentless work. Senior attorney at 31, undefeated in court for the past 18 months, the kind of lawyer opposing counsel feared and clients paid premium rates to secure. But right now, staring at the glowing screen in her hands, none of that mattered. Gary Green, her husband of 3 years, the man who'd held her last week and whispered that she was his entire world. Standing at an elaborate altar on a Santorini cliffside, his arm around a woman in a couture wedding gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. The Instagram post came from at Luxury Lifestyle Mag, a celebrity blogger with 8 million followers. Exclusive: tech billionaire heiress Dominique Laurent's secret dream wedding to her longtime love Gary Green. 5 years of romance culminate in this breathtaking Santorini ceremony. Swipe for more photos of their epic love story. Tayana swiped. Photo after photo. Gary in a custom tuxedo she'd never seen, looking at this woman, Dominique Laurent, the way he'd looked at Tayana on their wedding day. Dominique's hand displaying a massive diamond ring, Gary's matching platinum band catching Greek sunlight, a photo of them cutting a 6-tier cake, another of them dancing on a yacht deck, and the caption on the 4th photo stopped Tayana's heart. 5 years of keeping their relationship private, and now Gary and Dominique are finally making it official. Their friends say they've been inseparable since the day they met. 5 years. Tayana's lawyer brain kicked into overdrive, doing calculations with brutal precision. She'd been married to Gary for 3 years, which meant Gary had been with Dominique, had been married to Dominique based on those rings for 2 full years before he'd ever proposed to Tayana. Before he'd looked into her eyes at their rehearsal dinner and said, "You're the only woman I've ever truly loved." Before he'd slid that ring onto her finger and promised her forever. Before he'd made her believe she'd finally found someone who saw past her extraordinary beauty to the brilliant, ambitious woman underneath. Tayana Davis was the kind of beautiful that made people stop mid-sentence when she entered a room. Flawless, dark skin that seemed to glow from within. Features so perfectly symmetrical that strangers approached her weakly, asking if she modeled. A figure that made designer clothes look like they'd been created specifically for her body. She'd learned early that beauty could be a weapon or a burden, depending on how you wielded it. She'd chosen to make it a weapon, combined with a mind sharp enough to eviscerate opponents in depositions and a work ethic that put her in the office before dawn and kept her there past midnight. Tayana had built herself into someone untouchable. Except Gary had touched her, had broken through every defense she'd carefully constructed, had made her believe that someone could love her for her mind, her ambition, her drive, not just her face, and it had all been a lie. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gary. "Baby, meeting's running long, might not be able to call tonight. Love you so much. Can't wait to see you when I get home." The timestamp showed he'd sent it 3 hours ago, right before he'd walked down that Santorini aisle toward his billionaire wife. Tayana's hands didn't shake. Her breathing didn't accelerate. Years of maintaining composure in high-stakes negotiations had trained her to lock down emotion when her brain needed to function. And right now, her brain was functioning with crystal clarity. She opened her laptop and created a new encrypted folder, Green Evidence. Then she started screenshotting every photo from the Instagram post, every comment, every tagged location, every detail. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again. Different unknown number. Ignored. Then her personal cell started vibrating, Gary's name flashing on the screen. She watched it buzz. Once, twice, 3 times. Let it go to voicemail. Immediately it started ringing again. Tayana powered off the phone and went back to her laptop. She pulled up her firm's database and started searching. Financial records from cases she'd worked on that involved Gary's business dealings. Email chains where she'd provided legal advice. Documents she'd reviewed and approved with her signature. Her stomach turned as she found the first one. A tax filing from 2 years ago where Gary had declared himself unmarried for federal purposes. She'd reviewed that document, had asked him specifically, "This shows you as single, is that correct?" And Gary had looked her in the eyes and said, "Of course, I'm not married yet. Not until I marry you." She'd believed him, had signed off on the document, had used her legal expertise to help him structure deals that were based on fraudulent marital status. He'd made her an unwitting accomplice. Tayana's jaw tightened as the full scope of Gary's betrayal crystallized. This wasn't just personal, this was federal crime, marriage fraud, tax evasion, perjury on official documents, wire fraud, and he'd used her, a respected attorney, to legitimize it all. She pulled up more files, found more lies, more documents where Gary had falsified his marital status, and she'd provided legal cover without knowing she was enabling fraud. The brilliant attorney who'd built her career on seeing through lies had been living one for 3 years. Her office door opened. Her assistant Karen stuck her head in. "Ms. Davis, you have a call from someone named Dominique Laurent. She says it's urgent regarding Gary Green. Should I—" "Put her through," Tayana said, her voice steady. Karen's eyes widened at Tayana's tone, cold enough to freeze steel, but she retreated without comment. The phone on Tayana's desk lit up. She let it ring 3 times before answering. Control was everything. "This is Tayana Davis. Ms. Davis." The voice on the other end was refined, controlled, but carrying an edge of something sharp. "My name is Dominique Laurent. I believe we have a significant problem in common named Gary Green." "I'm listening." "I saw your comment on the Instagram post about my wedding. Congratulations on your marriage, Gary. At first I thought you were just a friend. Then my assistant showed me your profile." Dominique paused. "You're listed as married to Gary Green, have been for 3 years." "That's correct. I've been married to him for 5. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither woman wanted to voice. "I see," Tayana said quietly. "So we're both married to a bigamist." "It appears so." Dominique's composure cracked slightly. "Ms. Davis, Tayana, I had no idea you existed until 20 minutes ago. I've been trying to reach Gary since I saw your comment, but he's not answering. I think he knows we've both discovered the truth." "Good," Tayana said. "Let him panic." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, Dominique laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're angry." "I'm calculating," Tayana corrected. "Anger is unproductive. Strategy is effective." "You're a lawyer, corporate attorney, top of my field, which means I know exactly what kind of legal hell Gary Green just walked into." Tayana's voice was ice cold. "Bigamy is a federal crime. So is tax fraud, which I'm certain he's been committing using both marriages. So is marriage fraud, wire fraud, and about a dozen other charges I can think of off the top of my head." "I have excellent attorneys," Dominique said, "and unlimited resources to pursue this." "I am an excellent attorney," Tayana replied, "and I have 3 years of evidence documenting Gary's lies. Between your resources and my expertise, Ms. Laurent, we can destroy him." Another pause. When Dominique spoke again, her voice carried something like respect. "I think we should meet, soon, and compare notes on the man who betrayed us both." "Agreed, but not yet." Tayana was already forming a plan. "First, I'm going to disappear, and while I'm gone, I'm going to build a case so airtight that when I resurface, Gary Green won't have a single defense left." "Where are you going?" "Somewhere he'll never find me." Tayana began closing windows on her laptop, each click deliberate. "When I'm ready, when the case is bulletproof, I'll contact you. Until then, don't tell anyone you've spoken to me. Let him wonder. Let him search. Fear is a weapon, Ms. Laurent, and I intend to use it." "I like the way you think, Ms. Davis." "Call me Tayana. We're going to be allies in this." "Then call me Dominique." "And Tayana?" A pause. "Make him suffer." "That's the plan." Tayana ended the call and sat back in her leather chair, staring out at the city skyline as the sun began setting. Golden light painted the buildings, turning ordinary glass into something that looked like fire. Appropriate. because she was about to burn Gary Green's entire world to ashes. She stood, walked to her assistant's desk, and delivered her instructions with the same calm she used when closing million-dollar deals. "Karen, cancel everything on my calendar for the next 6 months. Personal emergency. I'm taking indefinite leave." 6 months? Karen's face showed shock. "Ms. Davis, you have the Morrison case. Reassign it to Stevens. He's competent enough." Tayana's tone left no room for argument. "And Karen? When people ask where I've gone, and they will ask, you tell them you haven't heard from me. You don't know where I am. You have no information to share. Understood?" Karen had worked with Tayana long enough to know when her boss meant business. "Understood. Is everything okay?" "Everything will be." Tayana placed a hand briefly on Karen's shoulder. "Thank you for your discretion." Then she walked out of the office she'd worked so hard to earn, rode the elevator down 42 floors, and went home to the penthouse she'd shared with a man who'd turned out to be a complete stranger. The apartment felt different now, contaminated. Every surface, every piece of furniture, every memory, all of it poisoned by the knowledge that nothing had been real. Tayana moved through the space with military efficiency. 2 suitcases, essential clothes, her laptop, documents from the safe Gary didn't know about, the one she'd installed herself because some part of her had always believed in being prepared for the worst. Smart woman, just not smart enough to see this coming. From that safe, she pulled out $50,000 in cash, emergency money she'd been saving for years, money Gary had never known existed. Along with it came her backup passport, a separate credit card in her maiden name that Gary had never seen, and a burner phone still in its package. Tayana carried everything to the dining room table and sat down with a piece of legal letterhead. Her handwriting was precise, each word chosen for maximum impact. Notice of dissolution of marriage. Gary Green, this marriage is hereby terminated effective immediately due to fraud, deception, and bigamy. Divorce proceedings will be filed upon my return. Do not contact me. Do not search for me. Do not attempt to find me. You are not who I thought you were, and I am not who you will ever touch again. Tayana Davis, Esquire, Senior Attorney at Law. She read it 3 times, making sure every word was exactly right. Then she walked to their apartment door and taped it to the outside, where every neighbor on their floor would see it, where Gary would see it the moment he stepped off the elevator. Public humiliation for public betrayal. Tayana rolled her suitcases into the hallway, locked the door behind her, and dropped her keys in the mail slot. She wouldn't be coming back. Not to this apartment, not to this life, not to the woman who'd been stupid enough to believe in Gary Green's lies. At the airport, she bought a one-way ticket to Portland with cash. No electronic trail, no credit cards, no way for Gary to track her. In the bathroom, she methodically destroyed every credit card she owned, snapping them in half and tossing the pieces in different trash cans. Her phone, the one Gary knew about, got factory reset and wiped, the SIM card she snapped with her bare hands before throwing the phone itself in a garbage bin near her gate. Tayana Davis, as Gary knew her, was disappearing. As her plane lifted off the runway, city lights spreading below like scattered diamonds, she allowed herself to think one last time about the man she'd married. Gary had protected her once. Early in their marriage, when 2 men tried to rob her walking home from late work, Gary had heard her scream and run toward danger without hesitation. He'd fought them both, taken a black eye and bruised ribs, held her while she cried, and told her he'd always keep her safe. Another time, a senior partner at her firm had been sexually harassing her. Inappropriate touches, suggestive comments, implications that her success depended on being friendly with him. Tayana had been documenting everything, preparing to file complaints. But before she could, the harassment stopped completely. Gary had gone to the man's house. Tayana never knew what exactly was said, but the partner wouldn't even make eye contact with her after that. Gary had made her feel protected, cherished, loved. That's what made this betrayal so devastating. It wasn't just that he'd lied, it was that he'd been exactly what she needed, exactly when she needed it. He'd broken through her defenses by being the perfect man, except perfect men don't exist. And Gary Green had been performing a role while living a completely different life with someone else. The flight attendant came by offering drinks. Tiana ordered water and stared out the window at darkness, broken only by occasional lights from cities thousands of feet below. She wasn't crying, wasn't breaking down, wasn't falling apart. She was calculating, planning, building a strategy that would ensure Gary Green faced every single consequence he'd been running from. Because Tiana Davis had built her career on one simple principle: people who lie in her presence get destroyed. Methodically, legally, completely. And Gary Green had just committed the worst lie of all. Somewhere over the Midwest, Tiana's destroyed phone, buried in an airport trash can 3,000 miles behind her, buzzed with its 66th call. Gary's voicemail was frantic, breaking. "Tiana, please. That Instagram post, someone's trying to destroy us. It has to be fake. Some kind of Photoshop. I'm coming home right now. I'm catching the first flight out. We'll fix this together. I love you. God, baby, I love you so much. Please just answer, please." His voice cracked. "Don't do anything crazy. I can explain everything. Just please, please answer your phone." But Tiana was already gone, disappearing into the night like smoke, a ghost haunting the empty space where Gary's lies used to live. When he came home to their apartment, he'd find nothing but a divorce notice taped to the door and the echoing silence of consequences he'd spent 5 years pretending didn't exist. And in the mountains of Oregon, Tiana would rebuild herself into something Gary Green wouldn't recognize, something harder, sharper, and absolutely committed to one purpose: making sure that when she came back, she wouldn't just destroy him, she'd erase him from existence. Gary Green had underestimated her for the last time, and he was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any courtroom isn't the one who yells the loudest. It's the one who calculates in silence and strikes when you least expect it. Tiana smiled in the darkness of the plane cabin, cold and certain. The game had just begun, and she'd already won. Chapter 2. The Mountain Sanctuary. The mountains swallowed Tiana whole, and she let them. She'd driven 3 hours north of Portland into the Oregon wilderness, until the roads turned from highways to 2-lane back roads to gravel paths that didn't appear on any GPS. The cabin she found was listed under off-grid rentals on a website that looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. Perfect. The owner was a woman in her 70s who asked exactly 0 questions when Tiana showed up with cash and a fake name. Rachel Monroe paid 6 months up front, $15,000 in $100 bills, and the old woman handed over keys and a handwritten list of instructions for the well pump and wood stove. "You running from the law or from a man?" the woman asked as Tiana was leaving. "Does it matter?" "Not particularly. Just wanted to know if I should expect police or a desperate fool showing up asking questions." The woman's eyes were sharp, knowing. "Police. I cooperate. Desperate fools. I tell them I've never seen you." "Desperate fool," Tiana confirmed. The woman nodded. "Then you were never here, Rachel Monroe." The cabin sat 40 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by pine forests so dense the sunlight barely penetrated. No internet, no cell service, no neighbors within shouting distance. Just silence thick enough to drown in. For the first week, Tiana did nothing but exist. She slept 16 hours a day, her body finally releasing the exhaustion she'd been carrying. When she was awake, she sat on the porch and stared at trees until her mind went blank. She didn't think about Gary, didn't think about the wedding, didn't think about the 3 years of lies. She just breathed. The second week, she started hiking, mile after mile through wilderness that didn't care about her heartbreak or her rage. The physical exhaustion helped. Climbing steep trails until her lungs burned and her legs screamed gave her something to focus on besides the betrayal playing on loop in her head. The third week she screamed, Deep in the forest where no one could hear, Tayana let out every emotion she'd been holding. She screamed until her throat was raw, until her voice cracked and gave out, until she collapsed against a tree trunk, and finally let herself cry. She cried for the woman who'd believed Gary when he said he was working late, for the wife who'd trusted him when he said business trips were mandatory, for the fool who'd built her entire life around a man who was living a double life with someone else. When the tears stopped, something else remained. Not grief, not sadness. Something harder and colder that settled in her chest like ice. Determination. The fourth week, Tayana drove into the nearest town, Ridgemont, Oregon, population 847 according to the faded sign at the town limits. One main street, one diner, one general store, one gas station. The kind of place where strangers stood out immediately. She felt the stares as she walked into the general store. Tayana's extraordinary beauty was impossible to hide, even in worn jeans and a plain jacket. The teenage boy behind the counter stammered when she asked about light bulbs. An older woman whispered to her friend as Tayana passed. A man near the hardware section just stared, unblinking. Tayana hated it. She'd come here to disappear, not to be noticed. She grabbed supplies quickly, light bulbs, batteries, canned food, coffee, and was heading to the checkout when she noticed the porch on her cabin had been in her mind. The wood was rotting, dangerous. She needed lumber and tools she didn't have. "Excuse me," she said to the store owner, an older man with kind eyes. "I need some repair work done on a porch. Do you know anyone reliable?" "Tiger Washington," the man said immediately. "Runs the furniture workshop across the street. Does custom work and repairs, best craftsman in 3 counties, fair prices, doesn't talk your ear off, shows up when he says he will." Tayana glanced out the window. Across the street sat a converted barn with a hand-painted sign, Washington Woodworks. "Thank you," she said, paid in cash, and left. The workshop smelled like sawdust and wood stain. Tayana stepped inside and found a man bent over a workbench, hands moving with practiced precision as he sanded a piece of cedar. He didn't look up when she entered. "Be with you in a minute," he said, voice low and calm, "just finishing this edge." Tayana waited, studying him. Tiger Washington was maybe early 40s, with the kind of build that came from physical work rather than gyms. His movements were economical, efficient. Former military, she'd bet money on it. Something about the way he carried himself, that quiet, controlled presence. He finished the edge, brushed off the sawdust, and finally looked up. Their eyes met, and something surprising happened. Tiger didn't stare at her face the way every other man in town had. His gaze was professional, assessing, already moving to the problem she'd bring. "Help you with something?" he asked. "I need a porch rebuilt. Wood's rotted through, it's dangerous." "Where's the property?" Tayana gave him directions to the cabin. Tiger pulled out a small notebook, wrote them down with precise handwriting. "I can come by tomorrow morning. Take a look, give you an estimate." "That work?" "That works. What time?" 8 sharp. I'll be there." Tiger nodded, then went back to his cedar piece. Conversation over. No small talk. No questions about who she was or why she was here. Just business. Tayana found herself relaxing slightly. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet," Tiger replied without looking up. "Haven't done the work." The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, Tiger's truck pulled up to the cabin. Tayana watched from the window as he got out, grabbed a toolbox, and examined the porch without knocking first. Professional, respectful of her space. After several minutes, he knocked. Tayana opened the door. "Porch is worse than you probably think," Tiger said. "Rot goes deeper than the surface boards. Needs to be rebuilt from the support beams up. I can do it in 2 days. Materials and labor, 1,500. Cash." "That's fair. When can you start?" "Today if you want. Got the materials in my truck already." Tayana blinked. "You brought materials before I agreed to the price?" "Figured if you were living out here, you'd need it done fast. If you'd said no, I'd use the lumber for something else." Tiger's expression didn't change. So? Yes or no? Yes. Cash up front? Tayana went inside, counted out $1,500 bills, and handed them over. Tiger counted it quickly, nodded, and got to work. For 2 days, Tiger rebuilt the porch. He arrived at 8 each morning, worked until late afternoon, and left without unnecessary conversation. Tayana watched from inside, noticing how he measured twice, cut once, wasted nothing. His craftsmanship was meticulous. On the second afternoon, as he was finishing, Tayana brought him water. "You don't talk much," she observed. "Don't see the point in talking just to fill silence," Tiger replied, accepting the water. "You came out here to get away from something. Figure the last thing you need is someone asking questions you don't want to answer." The observation hit harder than Tayana expected. "You're right. Usually am." Tiger drained the water, handed back the glass. "Porch is done. Should last you 10 years minimum if you maintain it right." "Thank you." Tiger packed his tools, started toward his truck, then paused. Without turning around, he said quietly, "You're running from something serious. That's your business. But if you need anything else fixed while you're here, workshops open most days." Then he drove away, leaving Tayana standing on her new porch, wondering how this stranger had read her so easily when Gary had fooled her for 3 years. Over the next few weeks, Tayana found excuses to stop by the workshop: a cabinet door that stuck, a wobbly chair. Each time, Tiger fixed the problem efficiently and charged fair prices. Their conversations stayed surface level: weather, wood types, the best hiking trails. But underneath, Tayana sensed something, a recognition. Like Tiger knew what it meant to run from something that hurt too much to face. She told herself she was just being practical. The cabin needed repairs, and Tiger was skilled. That's all it was. But when she lay awake at night in her isolated cabin, she kept thinking about the way Tiger had protected her privacy without her having to ask. The way he treated her like a person, not a beautiful object to be stared at. The way his presence felt solid and real in a world where everything she'd trusted had turned out to be fiction. Tayana pushed the thoughts away. Trust was what destroyed her. She wouldn't make that mistake again. No matter how steady Tiger Washington seemed, she was done believing in anyone but herself. Late one night, as Tayana sat on her rebuilt porch under a sky full of stars she never saw in the city, her encrypted laptop, which she'd been avoiding, chimed with a news alert. She'd set up a search years ago for Gary's name, back when she'd been proud to see his business successes mentioned in the press. She'd forgotten to disable it. The headline made her blood run cold: "Billionaire Dominique Laurent files for divorce, alleges fraud and bigamy against husband Gary Green." Tayana clicked the article. Dominique had discovered everything. The Instagram comment had led her to investigate, and what she'd found had detonated Gary's entire world. Federal prosecutors were now involved. Marriage fraud, tax evasion, wire fraud. Gary was facing serious prison time, and according to the article, investigators were desperately searching for Gary's second wife, Tayana Davis, whose testimony could seal his fate. Tayana closed the laptop and stared into the darkness. Gary's world was collapsing, just like hers had, but the prosecutors wanted her to come back, to testify, to be part of destroying the man who'd destroyed her. She sat there for hours, wrestling with the decision. Part of her wanted to stay hidden forever, to let Gary suffer without her involvement. But another part, the part that had screamed in the forest, that had cried until she had no tears left, wanted to watch him burn, and she wanted to light the match herself. Chapter 3. The Husband's Discovery. Gary Green stood in the hallway of his building, staring at the paper taped to his apartment door like it was a bomb about to explode. His hands shook as he ripped down the divorce notice, the sound of tearing paper obscenely loud in the quiet hallway. He could feel his neighbors watching through peepholes, hear whispered conversations behind closed doors. Everyone on this floor would know by morning, everyone in the building by afternoon. Tayana had made sure of that. Inside the apartment, the emptiness hit him like a physical blow. Every trace of her was gone, her clothes, her books, her ridiculous collection of coffee mugs from every city she'd ever visited for work. The bathroom counter where her skincare products had cluttered every available surface, bare. The closet where her power suits had hung, empty. Even the photographs were gone, leaving pale rectangles on the walls where frames had protected the paint from fading. She'd erased herself from his life as completely as if she'd never existed. Gary pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed her number. The automated voice that answered felt like a slap. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." He tried her office. "Ms. Davis is on indefinite personal leave," her assistant said, in a tone that suggested she'd been instructed to say nothing more. "I can't provide additional information." "This is her husband," Gary said, desperation bleeding into his voice. "I need to know where she is. It's an emergency." "I understand, Mr. Green, but I have no information to share. Goodbye." The line went dead. Gary called Tayana's closest friend, a fellow attorney named Simone who'd been in their wedding. She answered on the third ring. "You have some nerve calling me," Simone said, her voice ice-cold. "Simone, please, I need to find Tayana. She's not answering her phone and I—" "Good. I hope you never find her." The anger in Simone's voice was razor-sharp. "I hope she's somewhere you can't touch, can't manipulate, can't lie to anymore. You're disgusting, Gary, married to another woman the entire time, while Tayana was building you up, supporting your business, standing by you. You don't understand. It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's called bigamy. It's called fraud. It's called being a lying piece of trash who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as Tayana Davis." Simone's voice dropped to something even colder. "And just so you know, when the police come asking questions, I'm telling them everything I know. When lawyers come looking for witnesses, I'm volunteering. You're going to pay for what you did to her." She hung up. Gary stood in the empty apartment, panic rising in his chest like floodwater. He dialed the private investigator he'd used for business matters. "I need you to find someone. My wife, Tayana Davis. She disappeared, and I need her location immediately." "I'll need details," the investigator said. "Credit card records, phone pings, known associates?" "She's not using her credit cards, her phone's disconnected, and her associates won't talk to me." Gary's voice cracked. "Please, I need to find her. I'll do what I can. But Mr. Green, if someone doesn't want to be found and they're smart about it, they can disappear completely, especially if they have money and time to plan." Tayana had both. Gary ended the call and opened Instagram, staring at the post that had destroyed everything. Thousands of comments now, most congratulating Dominique. But near the top, Tayana's comment remained, "Congratulations on your marriage, Gary." 7 words that had detonated his entire existence. His phone rang. "Dominique." Gary's stomach dropped, but he answered, "Where are you?" Her voice was calm, controlled, dangerous. "Home. I flew back early when you saw that I found out about your other wife." Dominique's laugh was sharp. "Your secret marriage to Tayana Davis, the woman you've been living with for 3 years while you were married to me for 5? "Dominique, I can explain." "Explain what, exactly? Explain how you committed bigamy. Explain how you used my money to fund your double life. Explain how you falsified tax documents, lied on federal filings, and committed about a dozen other felonies I'm still discovering." Her voice rose slightly, the only crack in her composure. "I had my attorneys pull everything, Gary, every bank record, every filing, every lie you told." Gary's knees went weak. He sat down hard on the couch. "Please, don't do this." "I already did it. I filed for divorce this morning. I also contacted federal prosecutors. They're very interested in your creative accounting and marriage fraud." Dominique paused. "And they're very interested in finding Tayana Davis. Because her testimony, that's what will put you in prison for the next 20 years. "She won't testify," Gary said, grasping at anything. "She's too hurt. She just wants to disappear. She won't come back." "Are you sure about that?" Dominique's question hung in the air. "Because I've been researching your other wife, Tayana Davis, senior attorney. undefeated in court, known for being ruthless with people who lie to her. You really think she'll let you get away with this? Gary had no answer. Find her, Dominique said. Find her and convince her not to testify. Because if she walks into that courtroom, Gary, you'll spend the next 2 decades in federal prison. That's your only chance. She hung up. Gary sat alone in the empty apartment as the sun set, darkness creeping across the floor. He thought about Tayana, brilliant, beautiful Tayana, who'd stood by him through everything, who'd believed in him when his business was struggling, who'd used her legal expertise to help him close deals, structure contracts, build his empire. He thought about the night he'd saved her from those muggers, how she'd looked at him like he was her hero, the way she'd cried in his arms, trusting him to keep her safe. He thought about how he'd taken that trust and systematically destroyed it for 5 years. His phone buzzed with an email from his investigator. Preliminary search complete. No credit card activity, no phone records, no travel under her name, no hotel reservations, no rental agreements, no digital footprint whatsoever. Either she's dead or she planned this disappearance with remarkable precision. If she doesn't want to be found, Mr. Green, you won't find her, not without significant resources and time. Gary read the email 3 times, each word sinking deeper into his chest. Tayana was gone. And she'd vanished so completely it was like she'd never existed at all. But somewhere out there, Gary knew she was thinking, planning, deciding whether to come back and destroy him or stay hidden and let him twist in the wind. And he knew Tayana well enough to know one thing for certain. Whichever choice she made, it would be calculated, deliberate, and designed for maximum impact. Because that's what brilliant attorneys did. They built cases. They gathered evidence. They waited for the perfect moment to strike. Gary walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, wondering where in the world his wife had gone, wondering if she was watching the news about Dominique's divorce filing, wondering if she was already planning her revenge. And for the first time in his entire life, Gary Green, who'd always believed he was the smartest person in any room, realized he'd made one catastrophic mistake. He'd betrayed a woman who was smarter, stronger, and far more dangerous than he'd ever given her credit for. Somewhere out there, Tayana Davis was deciding his fate, and there wasn't a single thing Gary could do to stop her. Chapter 4. The Protector's Instinct. Tayana had been in the mountains for 2 months when the men started bothering her. It was late afternoon, and she'd just finished buying supplies at the general store. The town was quiet, the way it usually was, locals going about their business, nobody paying much attention to anyone else, exactly how Tayana liked it. But today was different. 3 men from a logging crew had been drinking at the bar attached to the diner, and they'd spilled out onto the main street just as Tayana was loading supplies into her truck. "Hey there, beautiful," one of them called out. He was tall, heavy-built, with the kind of swagger that came from too many beers and too little sense. "You new in town?" Tayana ignored him, focusing on her bags. "My friend asked you a question," another one said, stepping closer. "It's rude not to answer." Tayana straightened, her jaw tight. She'd dealt with men like this her entire life. Men who thought her beauty was an invitation, who couldn't comprehend that a woman might not want their attention. Usually, she shut them down with a few cold words and walked away. But these 3 were drunk enough to be stupid. "I'm not interested in conversation," Tayana said, her voice carrying the same tone she used in courtrooms when she was done with opposing counsel. "Move along." "Ooh, she's got attitude," the 3rd man laughed. He was blocking her path to the driver's side door. "Come on, just 5 minutes. Buy you a drink. You're way too pretty to be out here alone." "I said move. What if I don't want to?" He leaned against her truck, smirking. "What are you going to do about it?" Tayana's hand moved toward her purse, where she kept pepper spray. But before she could reach it, a voice cut through the tension like a knife. "The lady said, move." Tiger Washington stepped out from his workshop across the street, his posture relaxed but radiating something that made all 3 men straighten up immediately. He wasn't threatening. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides, watching. The drunk men looked at him, looked at each other, then back at Tiger. "We're just talking," the tall one said, defensive now. "No, you're not. You're harassing someone who wants nothing to do with you." Tiger's voice stayed level. "And now you're leaving." "Or what?" the one blocking Tayana's door said, trying to sound tough. Tiger didn't answer. He just looked at the man with the kind of steady, unblinking stare that Tayana recognized from depositions, the look of someone who'd seen real violence and wasn't afraid of it. The man backed down immediately. "Whatever, man. Not worth it." All three of them walked away, muttering under their breath but moving quickly. Tiger watched them go until they turned the corner, then looked at Tayana. "You okay?" "I had it handled," Tayana said, her walls going up automatically. "But thank you. I know you did. Saw you reaching for something in your purse. Pepper spray?" When Tayana nodded, Tiger continued. "Smart. But 3 drunk idiots against 1 person? Better to avoid the fight entirely." He started to walk back to his workshop, clearly considering the matter closed. "Tiger!" Tayana called after him. He stopped. "Why'd you help?" "Because you needed it." He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "And because you shouldn't have to defend yourself alone just because you're beautiful and they're drunk." Then he went back to his workshop, leaving Tayana standing by her truck, something unfamiliar warming in her chest. That night, lying in bed in her isolated cabin, Tayana couldn't stop thinking about how Tiger had stepped in without making her feel weak. He hadn't treated her like a damsel who needed saving. He'd just evened the odds, given her backup when the situation turned dangerous. Gary used to protect her like that, she remembered, back when she thought he was the man she'd spent her life with. But Tiger was different. He didn't expect gratitude, didn't use it as an excuse to get closer. He just helped and walked away. Tayana pushed the thoughts aside and pulled out her laptop. The news articles about Gary's implosion had multiplied. Dominique's divorce filing was national news now. Legal experts were speculating about criminal charges, and every article mentioned the same thing. Prosecutors are seeking testimony from Gary Green's second wife, whose whereabouts remain unknown. They wanted her to come back, to testify, to be part of destroying him. Tayana closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. She still wasn't ready, but something was shifting inside her, changing from the raw hurt of 2 months ago into something colder and more focused. Revenge. Over the next few weeks, Tayana found herself at Tiger's workshop more often. She'd bring him coffee from the diner. He'd show her how to sand wood properly, how to choose the right stain, how to build something strong that would last. Their conversations stayed surface level: mountain weather, wildlife sightings, the best firewood for winter. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, deeper truths slipped through. "You ever wonder if people can change?" Tayana asked one afternoon while Tiger was teaching her to use a handplane. Tiger looked up from the piece of oak he was working on. "Change from what to what?" "From someone who hurts you into someone trustworthy." "No," Tiger said immediately. "People who hurt you aren't broken versions of good people. They're exactly who they are. The question isn't whether they can change. It's whether you're willing to accept that who they showed you was the truth all along." The words hit Tayana hard. That's pretty definitive. It's experience. Tiger's hands moved over the wood with practiced ease. "I spent 2 years believing my business partner was a good man who made a mistake. Kept giving him chances, kept thinking he'd become the person I thought he was." He paused. "But he didn't make a mistake. He showed me exactly who he was. Someone willing to destroy me for profit. I just didn't want to see it." "What changed?" "I stopped lying to myself about who he was, accepted the truth. And once I did that," Tiger looked at Tayana directly, "I stopped being his victim and started being someone who wouldn't let anyone use me like that again." Tayana absorbed that, recognizing the truth in it. "Is that why you're out here?" "Partially. Also because I like building things more than I like people." Tiger returned to his work. Present company excluded. It was the closest thing to a compliment Tiger had ever given her, and Tayana felt that unfamiliar warmth again. But she pushed it down. She couldn't afford to feel anything for anyone. Not yet. Maybe not ever. One evening, as Tayana was leaving the workshop, Tiger called after her. "You planning to stay here permanently, or is this just a stop while you figure things out?" Tayana turned back. "Why?" "Because you've got the look of someone still deciding whether to keep running or go back and fight." Tiger leaned against his workbench, studying her. "And I've seen that look in the mirror enough to recognize it." "What did you decide?" Tayana asked. "When you had that look?" "I decided that running away from something and running towards something are different things. Out here, I'm not running from my old partner. I'm building the life I actually want." His eyes held hers. "But you? You're still running from something. Haven't started building yet." The observation cut deeper than Tayana wanted to admit. "Maybe I'm not ready to build yet. Maybe. Or maybe you're just scared that if you build something new, someone will destroy it again." Tiger's voice was gentle but unflinching. "That's the real question, isn't it? Not whether you can survive what happened, but whether you're brave enough to risk it happening again." Tayana left without answering, but his words followed her back to the cabin and kept her awake most of the night. Tiger Washington was dangerous, she realized. Not because he was pushing her or demanding anything, but because he saw through every wall she'd built, and he was patient enough to wait for her to take them down herself. And patience was something Gary had never had. That thought alone should have made her trust Tiger more. Instead, it terrified her, because if she let herself trust him, if she let herself feel anything real for this quiet, solid man who protected her without asking for anything in return, what happened when it turned out to be another lie? What happened when Tiger turned out to be just another version of Gary, wearing a different mask? Tayana couldn't survive being destroyed again. She just couldn't. So she did the only thing that made sense. She started avoiding Tiger's workshop, stopped bringing him coffee, found excuses not to need repairs, put distance between them before something dangerous could grow. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, Tayana kept thinking about the way Tiger had stepped between her and those drunk men, the way he'd made her feel safe without making her feel weak. And she kept thinking about his question. Was she brave enough to risk building something new, knowing it could be destroyed? She didn't have an answer yet, but somewhere deep inside, beneath all the fear and hurt and rage, a small voice was starting to whisper that maybe, just maybe, not everyone was Gary Green, and maybe Tiger Washington was exactly who he appeared to be, a good man who'd been hurt badly and rebuilt himself into something stronger. The question was whether Tayana had the courage to believe it. Chapter 5. The walls hold firm. Tiger Washington noticed when Tayana stopped coming by the workshop. It wasn't subtle. For 3 weeks, she'd been a regular presence, bringing coffee, learning woodworking, filling the quiet space with questions about joinery and wood grain. Then, overnight, nothing. The workshop felt emptier without her there. Tiger understood what it meant. She was pulling back, rebuilding walls he'd unknowingly started to penetrate. He'd seen people do it before, get close to trusting someone, then panic and retreat. Usually because whoever hurt them in the first place had hurt them bad enough to make trust feel impossible. He gave her space, didn't push, didn't show up at her cabin uninvited, just kept working and waited to see if she'd come back on her own terms. Meanwhile, across the country, Gary Green's world was collapsing in spectacular fashion. Dominique Laurent's legal team had filed a preliminary divorce document that read like a criminal indictment. Page after page of evidence, falsified tax returns listing Gary as unmarried, financial records showing wire transfers from Dominique's accounts to Gary's personal holdings, email chains where Gary discussed structuring their marriage as a tax shelter with his accountant, federal banking documents with forged signatures. The document was filed publicly, which meant every news organization in the country had access. Financial networks ran it as their lead story. Legal experts analyzed it on television. Social media dissected every detail. Gary Green wasn't just being divorced, he was being systematically destroyed. But the most damaging part of Dominique's filing was the last section, titled Additional Material Witness. It outlined Tayana Davis's existence, Gary's second wife, married for 3 years while he was still legally married to Dominique. It included photos of Tayana and Gary's wedding, copies of their marriage certificate, evidence that Gary had never filed for divorce from either woman. Bigamy, federal marriage fraud, tax evasion, wire fraud. The charges were piling up, and every single one carried prison time. Gary sat in his half-empty apartment. He'd had to sell furniture to pay legal fees, reading the latest news article about his impending prosecution. His business had collapsed. His clients had fled. His bank accounts were frozen pending federal investigation, and he still had no idea where Tayana was. His phone rang, his lead attorney. "We need to talk about your options," the lawyer said without preamble. "Federal prosecutors officially filed charges this morning, 12 counts. If convicted on all of them, you're looking at 20 to 25 years. Gary's hands shook. "What are my options?" "Realistically, plea deal. If you cooperate fully, provide documentation, testify against anyone else involved in the financial irregularities, they might reduce it to 8 to 10 years. 8 to 10 years, Gary's voice cracked. For being married to two people. For being married to two people, falsifying federal documents, committing tax fraud, wire fraud, and about 8 other felonies, yes." The lawyer's tone was flat. "But here's the bigger problem. Dominique Laurent is cooperating fully with prosecutors. She's providing evidence, testimony, everything. She wants you buried." "What about Tayana?" "That's the wild card. If she surfaces and testifies, your chances of any favorable deal drop to almost zero. Her testimony would corroborate everything Dominique is saying, plus add additional fraud charges related to your relationship with her." The lawyer paused. "You need to find her, Gary. Convince her not to testify. It's your only shot." "I've been trying. She's vanished." "Try harder, because if she walks into that courtroom, you're done." The call ended. Gary stared at his phone, desperation clawing at his chest. He'd already spent $30,000 on private investigators who'd found nothing. Tayana Davis had disappeared as completely as if she'd never existed. His mind went to the memories he'd been avoiding, the good times, before everything fell apart. Tayana laughing at his jokes, Tayana supporting him through business failures, Tayana standing by him when everyone else doubted. There was a night, early in their marriage, when Gary had been at his lowest. A major deal had fallen through. He'd been on the verge of bankruptcy. Tayana had held him while he cried, told him they'd figure it out together, helped him restructure his business plan until it worked. She'd saved him then, and this is how he'd repaid her. Gary pulled up old photos on his phone. Tayana on their wedding day, absolutely stunning in her dress, looking at him like he was everything she'd ever wanted. Tayana at the beach, laughing with her head thrown back. Tayana asleep on their couch after a long day in court, still in her power suit, beautiful even in exhaustion. He'd destroyed the best thing in his life, and now she was gone. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Stop looking for her. She doesn't want to be found." "A friend." Gary stared at the message. Someone who knew where Tayana was. Someone protecting her. He tried calling the number. It rang once, then disconnected. When he tried again, the number was no longer in service. Back in Oregon, Tayana sat in her cabin, staring at the burner phone she'd used to send that message. She'd bought it in a town 3 hours away, sent one text, and destroyed it immediately after. Untraceable. But sending that message had accomplished something important. It told Gary she was alive, watching, and choosing not to come back. That uncertainty would destroy him more effectively than any testimony. Tayana opened her laptop and scrolled through more news articles. The prosecution was building their case methodically, piece by piece. They didn't need her testimony yet. Dominique was providing enough evidence to move forward, but eventually they'd push harder to find her. Eventually, she'd have to decide. Come back and destroy Gary in court, or stay hidden and let him twist in the wind. Tayana was leaning toward option 1, but she wasn't ready yet. A knock on her cabin door startled her. She closed the laptop quickly and walked to the door, checking through the window first. Tiger stood on her porch, holding something wrapped in cloth. Tayana opened the door. "I didn't call for any repairs." "I know. Brought you something." Tiger held out the cloth. "You left your coffee mug at the workshop 3 weeks ago. Thought you might want it back." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. Tayana took the mug. "Thank you." Tiger nodded, started to leave, then stopped. He turned back, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "I don't know what you're running from," he said quietly. "And I don't need to know. But I do know this. Whatever it is, you're strong enough to face it. I've watched you rebuild a porch from scratch, learn woodworking in weeks, survive alone in these mountains without complaint. You're not someone who stays down." He met her eyes. "So whenever you're ready to stop running and start fighting, you'll be ready for it." Tayana's throat tightened. "What if I'm never ready?" "Then you stay here and build a quiet life. Nothing wrong with that." Tiger shrugged. "But I don't think that's who you are. I think you're someone who faces things head on. You're just scared right now, and that's okay. Being scared doesn't make you weak. Staying scared forever, that's what gets you." He left before Tayana could respond. She stood in her doorway holding the coffee mug, watching his truck disappear down the mountain road. Tiger's words echoed in her head, mixing with the anger she'd been cultivating for months, the hurt she'd been burying, the rage she'd been afraid to unleash. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was strong enough to face this. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start fighting. That night, Tayana made a decision. She pulled out her laptop and started typing. Not to prosecutors, not to lawyers, to Dominique Laurent directly. The message was simple. "Ms. Laurent, my name is Tayana Davis. I believe we have something in common. We were both betrayed by the same man. I'm ready to talk. But I do it on my terms, in my time. If you're interested in comparing notes about the man who destroyed us both, reply to this email. We'll arrange a meeting." Tayana hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she sat back and waited to see if Dominique would respond. Because if she was going to destroy Gary Green, she wouldn't do it alone. She'd do it with the one person who had as much reason to want him buried as she did. 2 women betrayed, 2 women brilliant, 2 women ready for revenge. Gary Green had no idea what was coming for him. But he was about to find out. Chapter 6. The husband who once protected her. Dominique Laurent's response came within 3 hours. Tayana's encrypted email chimed in the dead of night, pulling her from restless sleep. She grabbed her laptop, heart pounding, and opened the message. "Miss Davis, I've been hoping you'd reach out. I have questions only you can answer, and I suspect you have questions for me as well. I'm willing to meet on your terms. Name the place and time. I'll come alone. D.L." Tayana read the message 3 times, analyzing every word the way she'd analyze a contract. Dominique was smart. No pressure, no demands, just a straightforward offer. Exactly how Tayana would have approached it if their positions were reversed. She typed back, 2 weeks from today. I'll send you coordinates the day before. Come alone, or I disappear again. Dominique's reply was immediate. Understood. Thank you for trusting me with this. Tayana closed the laptop. Trust was a strong word for what she was doing. This wasn't trust. This was strategy. Dominique had resources, evidence, and motivation. Together, they could build a case against Gary that would be absolutely unbeatable. But over the next 2 weeks, as Tayana prepared for the meeting, her mind kept drifting to memories she'd been trying to suppress. Memories of when Gary wasn't the monster who'd betrayed her, when he was the man who'd protected her. It had been a late night, 3 years ago, just after they'd gotten married. Tayana was walking home from the office, only 6 blocks, a route she'd walked hundreds of times. But that night, 2 men had been waiting in an alley. They'd grabbed her, demanding her purse, her phone, her jewelry. Tayana had fought. She'd taken self-defense classes, knew how to handle herself. But 2 against 1, both men bigger and stronger, and she'd been losing ground fast. Then, Gary's voice had cut through. Get away from my wife." He'd been a block behind her, had heard her shout, and he'd run toward danger without hesitation. Gary had fought both men with a ferocity Tayana had never seen, taking hits himself to protect her. He'd ended up with a black eye and bruised ribs, but the attackers had fled. Afterward, sitting in the emergency room while a doctor checked Gary's injuries, he'd held Tayana's hand and said, "I'll always protect you, no matter what. That's what marriage means." She'd believed him. Another memory surfaced. 6 months into their marriage, a senior partner at Tayana's firm had been making her work life hell. Inappropriate comments, unwanted touches, implications that her success depended on being friendly with him. Tayana had documented everything, planning to file a formal complaint. But before she could, the harassment stopped completely. The senior partner avoided her, wouldn't even make eye contact. When Tayana asked what happened, Gary had simply said, "I had a conversation with him. He won't bother you again." What kind of conversation? The kind where I made it very clear that if he ever looked at you wrong again, he'd regret it for the rest of his life. Gary's voice had been cold, absolute. Nobody hurts you and gets away with it. Nobody. At the time, Tayana had felt cherished, protected, loved. Now, sitting in her mountain cabin, she realized the cruelty of it. Gary had protected her from other men while simultaneously betraying her worse than any stranger ever could. He'd fought for her safety while living a secret life that would destroy her. The hypocrisy of it was staggering. Her phone, a new burner she'd bought for the Dominique meeting, rang. Unknown number. Tayana considered not answering, but something made her pick up. "Tayana?" Gary's voice, desperate and broken. "Please don't hang up. Please." Her blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "I've been tracking every burner phone purchase within 500 miles of major cities for weeks, paying people to flag any purchase matching your description." Gary's words came out in a rush. "I know you're somewhere remote. I know you're still alive. Please just listen for 1 minute." Tayana should have hung up, should have destroyed the phone immediately, but something kept her on the line. Maybe she needed to hear what he'd say. Maybe she needed to know if he'd actually apologize or just make excuses. 1 minute, she said, her voice ice cold. "Then I disappear again and you never find me." "I'm sorry." Gary's voice cracked. "I know that doesn't mean anything. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did. But I need you to know, what we had was real. My feelings for you were real." "You were married to someone else the entire time we were together," Tayana said, each word precise and cutting. "Which part of that was real, Gary? The part where you lied about business trips to visit your other wife? The part where you filed fraudulent tax documents? The part where you used me for my legal expertise while using her for her money?" "I never used you." "Don't." The word came out sharp. "Don't insult me by pretending this was anything other than calculated fraud. You're a bigamist and a criminal, and the only thing you're sorry about is getting caught." "That's not true." Gary sounded like he was crying. "Tayana, you have to understand. It started as a business arrangement with Dominique, a marriage on paper for tax purposes and investor confidence. I never meant to fall for you, but I did, and I couldn't lose either of you, so you destroyed us both." Tayana's anger was cold, controlled. "You didn't fall for me, Gary. You manipulated me. Every moment we shared was built on lies. Every time you said you loved me, you were coming from her bed or going to it. Every time you protected me from other men, you were the biggest threat in my life." "I did protect you. Those men who tried to rob you, I fought for you. The partner who harassed you, I made sure he never touched you again. That was real." "You protected me from everyone except yourself." Tayana's voice was steady, but her hands shook with rage. "You made me feel safe while you were the danger. That's not love, Gary. That's control. That's manipulation. That's psychological abuse." Silence on the other end, then quietly. "The prosecutors want you to testify. Dominique's lawyers have been trying to find you. If you come back, if you testify, I go to prison for 20 years. "I know. Tayana, please. I'm begging you. Don't testify. I'll give you whatever you want, money, property, anything. Just don't destroy my life." The audacity of it hit her like a physical blow. "You destroyed your own life when you decided to marry two people at once. You destroyed my life when you made me complicit in your fraud, and now you're asking me to protect you. I'm asking you to remember the good times. Remember when I saved you from those muggers. Remember when I stood up for you against that partner. Remember when I loved you." "You never loved me." Tayana's voice was absolute. "You loved what I could do for you, and now that I can't do anything but destroy you, you're desperate." "That's not true." "Your minute is up, Gary." Tayana stood, looking out at the mountain darkness. "Don't try to find me again. Don't call any more numbers. Don't track any more phones, because the next time I surface, it'll be in a courtroom, and I'll be the prosecution's star witness." "Tayana, wait!" She ended the call, removed the SIM card, and smashed the phone under her boot. Then she sat down and cried. Not for Gary, not for their marriage, but for the woman she'd been 3 years ago, the woman who'd believed in fairy tales and protection and love that turned out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. That woman was gone now, dead and buried in these mountains. What emerged from the cabin that night was someone harder, colder, and absolutely committed to one thing, making sure Gary Green faced every consequence he'd been running from, because he'd asked her to remember the good times, the times he'd protected her. But what Gary had forgotten was that Tayana was a brilliant attorney who'd built her career on destroying people who lied to her. And now she had all the motivation in the world to destroy the biggest liar she'd ever known. 2 weeks later, Tayana sent Dominique the coordinates for their meeting. A small diner in a town 3 hours from Ridgemont, neutral territory, where neither of them had connections. As Tayana drove there, she thought about Gary's plea, about his desperation, about how he'd tried to use their history as a weapon against her. He'd protected her once, that was true, but now she was going to show him what happened when you betrayed someone strong enough to protect herself. Gary Green had underestimated her for the last time, and he was about to learn that the woman he'd destroyed was coming back as something far more dangerous, a survivor with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Chapter 7. The rainy night. The storm rolled into the mountains without warning, turning afternoon into something dark and violent. Tayana was halfway back from her meeting with Dominique when the rain started, heavy drops that quickly became sheets of water hammering her windshield. The mountain roads turned treacherous, visibility dropping to almost nothing. The meeting had lasted 4 hours. She and Dominique had sat across from each other in a quiet diner booth, two women connected by the same betrayal, and compared notes on the man who'd destroyed them both. Dominique was nothing like Tayana had expected, not cold or calculating, but sharp, controlled, and absolutely certain about what she wanted. Gary in prison for the maximum sentence possible. She'd brought file after file of evidence, financial records, emails, documentation of every lie Gary had told. But what struck Tayana most was Dominique's question near the end. Did he make you feel safe? Like you were the only person in the world who mattered? Yes, Tayana had admitted. He was good at that. He made me feel the same way. Dominique's smile was bitter. That was his greatest skill, making us believe we were special, that we were different, that we were loved. They'd left the diner as allies, not friends, two generals planning a war against a common enemy. Dominique had hugged Tayana before leaving, a brief gesture that felt like a pact being sealed. Now, driving through the storm, Tayana felt something shift inside her. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had backup, someone who understood. Then her car started sputtering. The engine coughed, stuttered, and died. Tayana guided it to the shoulder, but she already knew this was bad. She was on a deserted mountain road, no cell service, no houses in sight, and a storm that was getting worse by the minute. She tried the engine again. Nothing. Tayana sat in the dark car, rain pounding the roof, and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of frustration before shifting into problem-solving mode. She had emergency supplies in the trunk. Flashlight, blankets, water. She could wait out the storm here, deal with the car in the morning, but the temperature was dropping fast, the kind of cold that could turn dangerous overnight. She'd been sitting there for over an hour, shivering despite the blankets, when headlights appeared through the rain. Tiger's truck. He pulled up behind her, got out without hesitation despite the storm, and ran to her driver's side window. Tayana rolled it down. "Engine trouble?" he asked, rain already soaking his jacket. "Won't start. I was going to wait it out here." Tiger shook his head. "Not safe. Temperatures dropping below freezing tonight. You'll get hypothermia." He checked her engine with a flashlight, water streaming down his face. "This needs parts I don't have in the truck. Won't be fixed until tomorrow at earliest." "Nearest hotel?" 50 miles back the way you came. Roads are getting impassable." Tiger looked at her directly. "I live 15 minutes from here. Got a guest room. You can stay there until the storm passes and we get your car fixed." Tayana's instinct was to refuse, to maintain distance, to protect herself from trusting anyone. But she was freezing, genuinely in danger, and Tiger was offering practical help with no strings attached, the same way he'd been doing for months. "Okay," she said. "Thank you. Grab what you need, I'll tow your car tomorrow." Tayana transferred her important bags to Tiger's truck, and they drove through the storm in silence. His cabin appeared through the rain like something out of a dream. Beautiful timber construction, large windows, surrounded by tall pines that swayed violently in the wind. Inside was warm, smelling like wood smoke and coffee. Tiger handed Tayana dry clothes, a sweatshirt and sweatpants that were too big but warm, and showed her to a small bathroom where she could change. When she came out, he'd started a fire in the stone fireplace and was making coffee in the kitchen. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please." They sat in the living room, fire crackling, rain hammering the windows. For a long time, neither spoke. Just two people existing in the same space, no pressure, no expectations. Then Tayana broke the silence. "I met with someone today. Someone who was hurt by the same person who hurt me." Tiger looked at her, waiting. "We're going to destroy him," Tayana continued. "Legally, completely. Make sure he faces every consequence he's been running from." "Good," Tiger said simply. "He deserves it. You don't even know what he did. I know he hurt you bad enough that you disappeared for months. I know he's the reason you can't trust anyone. That's enough." Tiger sipped his coffee. People who destroy others like that deserve to be destroyed themselves. Something in Tayana's chest loosened. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Scared that going back to face him means becoming weak again, means opening myself up to being hurt. Going back isn't weakness. Running away and staying away forever, that's weakness." Tiger set down his mug. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Tayana. You survived betrayal that would break most people. You disappeared completely when you needed to. You're rebuilding yourself from nothing. That's not weakness. That's power." "I don't feel powerful." "Because you're still healing. But healing doesn't mean you're not strong. It means you're smart enough to know you need time." Tiger leaned forward slightly. "And when you're ready to fight, you'll be unstoppable, because you've got something he doesn't." "What?" "The truth." Tiger's voice was quiet but certain. "Liars fear the truth, and you're the truth he's been running from. That makes you dangerous." Tayana met his eyes across the firelight. "Why do you believe in me so much? You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're brave enough to survive alone in these mountains. I know you're smart enough to disappear when someone with resources is hunting for you. I know you're strong enough to sit in that workshop and learn carpentry instead of falling apart." Tiger paused. "And I know you're the kind of person who keeps fighting even when you're terrified. That's who you are." "You make me sound better than I am. I'm just telling you what I see." The conversation shifted something between them. A wall Tayana had been carefully maintaining started to crack, because Tiger wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding, wasn't trying to get anything from her. He was just there, steady and solid and real. "Tell me about what happened to you," Tayana said. You mentioned a business partner who destroyed you, but you never gave me details. Tiger was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. Then he started talking. I was an architect, had my own firm. My partner and I built it from nothing, working 20-hour days, taking out loans, betting everything on our vision. His voice was measured, careful. We were best friends. I trusted him completely. Then I found out he'd been stealing my designs, presenting them as his own to clients, cutting me out of deals, slowly taking over the firm while I thought we were partners. What did you do? Confronted him. He denied everything. So I started documenting, gathered evidence, prepared to take him to court. Tiger's jaw tightened. But before I could, he moved first, filed paperwork claiming I'd been stealing from company accounts, forged documents, made it look like I was the one defrauding the firm. Tayana's lawyer brain kicked in immediately. He set you up. Completely. By the time I proved my innocence, he'd taken over the firm, alienated all our clients, destroyed my reputation in the industry. I spent 2 years in legal battles just to clear my name. Lost everything, the business, my savings, my career. Tiger finally looked at her. And my fiancée left me halfway through. Said she couldn't handle the stress. Your fiancée left when you needed her most? Yeah. Turns out she was more interested in the successful architect than the broken man fighting to prove he wasn't a criminal. Tiger's smile was bitter. So I lost everything. Business, reputation, relationship. All because I trusted the wrong person. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. Tiger stood, walked to the window, watched the storm outside. It taught me that some people will destroy you if it benefits them. And it taught me to recognize the difference between people who are temporarily in your life and people who'll stay when things get hard. Is that why you're out here? Tayana asked. Because you couldn't trust anyone anymore? Initially, yes. I came here to hide, same as you. Tiger turned back to face her. But then I realized something. Just because one person destroyed my trust doesn't mean everyone will. I was letting one bad experience dictate my entire future. So what changed? I started building things again. Not buildings, furniture, cabins, things I could create with my own hands. And I started helping people who needed help, like fixing your porch. And slowly, I remembered who I was before he destroyed me. Tiger's eyes held hers. I wasn't going to let him win by staying broken forever. Tayana felt tears burning behind her eyes. I want that. I want to remember who I was before he destroyed me. Then remember. Tiger's voice was gentle but firm. Remember that you're brilliant. Remember that you're strong. Remember that you survived. And remember that the woman sitting in my living room right now is the same woman who built a career on destroying liars in court. He didn't change who you are. He just made you forget, temporarily. The tears spilled over. Tayana wiped them away, frustrated with herself for crying. But Tiger crossed the room and sat beside her, not touching, just close. It's okay to be hurt, he said quietly. Being hurt doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And something in Tayana broke. All the pain she'd been holding back, all the rage and betrayal and grief she'd been burying, came flooding out. She cried harder than she had in months, and Tiger just sat there, steady and patient, letting her fall apart without trying to fix it. When the tears finally stopped, Tayana looked at him through blurry eyes. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. For not treating me like I'm broken. For just being here. Tiger smiled slightly. That's what people do when they care about each other. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither of them wanted to fully acknowledge. I should go to the guest room, Tayana said, standing. It's late. But as she turned to leave, Tiger caught her hand gently, not pulling, not demanding, just holding. You don't have to be alone tonight, he said quietly. Not if you don't want to be. Tayana looked down at their joined hands, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to maintain distance. But standing there in the firelight with this man who'd been nothing but honest and patient and kind, Teyana made a choice. She chose to be brave. She turned back to Tiger, their eyes meeting in the dim light. "I don't want to be alone." What happened next was slow and deliberate. Tiger pulled her closer, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, to pull away. But Teyana didn't. She leaned into him, into the warmth and solidity of someone who saw her as a person, not a possession. Their kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both testing whether this was real or another beautiful lie. But when nothing shattered, when the moment held steady and true, the kiss deepened. Tiger lifted her easily, carrying her to his bedroom without breaking contact. And there, in the warmth and safety of his cabin while the storm raged outside, Teyana let herself feel something she thought she'd never feel again. Trust. Their night together was passionate and raw and honest. Two people who'd been broken by betrayal, finding temporary sanctuary in each other. No lies, no games, just two damaged souls choosing connection over isolation. And for the first time in months, Teyana felt like herself again. Strong, powerful, alive. But when morning came, old fears would return, and Teyana would have to decide if she was brave enough to believe that not everyone was Gary Green, or if she'd let her past destroy her chance at something real. Chapter 8. The Trust That Breaks Again. Morning light filtered through Tiger's bedroom windows, soft and golden. Teyana woke slowly, awareness creeping in piece by piece. The weight of an arm around her waist, the warmth of another person beside her, the smell of coffee already brewing somewhere in the cabin. For one perfect moment she felt safe. Then reality crashed in. What had she done? Teyana carefully extracted herself from Tiger's arms and sat up, her heart racing. Last night had been real, honest, everything she'd thought she wanted, but in the cold light of morning, panic flooded through her veins. She'd trusted Gary completely, and he'd destroyed her. What made her think Tiger would be any different? Teyana dressed quickly, grabbing her clothes from where they'd been scattered across the floor. Her hands shook as she buttoned her shirt. She needed to leave, needed distance, needed to think clearly without Tiger's steady presence making her forget why she'd built walls in the first place. "Running already?" Tiger's voice was quiet, not judgmental, just observant. Teyana turned. He was sitting up in bed, watching her with those calm, knowing eyes. "I need to go," she said, her voice shakier than she wanted. "Last night was... I shouldn't have..." "Shouldn't have what?" Tiger stood, pulling on his jeans. "Shouldn't have let yourself feel something? Shouldn't have trusted me? Or shouldn't have admitted you're human? I don't know you well enough to have done what we did. You know me better than you think." Tiger's voice stayed level. "You've been watching me for months, Teyana, evaluating, testing, seeing if I'm real or another performance, and I've passed every test. So this isn't about not knowing me. This is about being terrified that I might actually be who I appear to be." Teyana's walls slammed up. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? You're scared that if you let yourself trust me, if you let yourself care about me, I'll turn out to be just like him. Another liar hiding behind a good performance." Tiger took a step closer. "But I'm not him, Teyana. And the fact that you can't see that says more about your fear than it does about me." "You're right," Teyana said, anger flooding her now. "I am scared, because the last time I trusted someone, he turned out to be a bigamist who destroyed my entire life. So forgive me if I'm not ready to just believe you're different because you say you are. I'm not asking you to believe me because I say it. I'm asking you to believe the evidence." Tiger's voice rose slightly. "I've been nothing but honest with you. I've protected you without asking for anything. I've given you space when you needed it and been there when you were ready. I've shown you exactly who I am, repeatedly, for months. What more do you need?" "I don't know," Teyana's voice cracked. "Maybe I need time. Maybe I need to not feel like I'm falling for someone when I'm still broken from the last person I fell for. Maybe I need to not feel like this is happening too fast. Then say that. Say you need time. Say you need space. Don't run away like I'm the enemy when all I did was give you what you asked for last night. Tayana grabbed her bag, tears burning in her eyes. I can't do this right now. Do what? Have an honest conversation? Actually deal with your feelings instead of burying them? Tiger's frustration was showing now. You're so busy protecting yourself from being hurt again that you can't see when someone is actually being real with you. Maybe that's true, Tayana shot back. Or maybe I've learned that every man who seems real eventually shows his true colors. How do I know you're not just better at hiding it than Gary was? The words landed like a slap. Tiger's face hardened. You really believe that? He asked quietly. Tayana wanted to take it back, wanted to admit she was just scared, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know what I believe anymore, she whispered. Tiger nodded slowly. Then I'll make this easy for you. Go. Take your time. Figure out what you want. But Tayana. He met her eyes directly. I meant everything I said last night. Everything I've shown you these past months. That's who I am. And when you're ready to accept that someone can actually be honest with you, I'll still be here. And if I'm never ready, then I'll still be here, just not waiting. Tiger turned away, grabbing a shirt. Your car should be fixable by this afternoon. I'll have it towed to my workshop. Keys will be in the ignition when it's done. No charge. The dismissal was clear, not cruel, just final. Tayana left without another word, walking through the early morning forest back to her cabin. The walk took 2 hours, plenty of time for her thoughts to spiral. What had she done? Tiger had been nothing but good to her, and she'd thrown it in his face because she was scared. But wasn't that smart? Wasn't protection what she needed? She didn't have answers. For the next week, Tayana avoided town, avoided any chance of seeing Tiger. She stayed in her cabin and focused on the one thing she could control, building the case against Gary. Dominique sent her encrypted files almost daily, evidence, emails, financial records. Together, they were constructing something unbeatable. Federal prosecutors had reached out to Dominique, asking about Tayana's whereabouts. Dominique had stonewalled them, saying Tayana would come forward when she was ready. That time was approaching. Tayana spent hours reviewing the evidence, making notes, preparing for what would be the biggest testimony of her career. She was good at this, clinical, precise, turning emotion into strategy. This was familiar territory, safe territory, not like the confusing mess of feelings Tiger had stirred up. On the 8th day after she'd left Tiger's cabin, Tayana drove into town to get supplies. She didn't plan to stop by the workshop, didn't plan to see him, but Tiger was standing outside when she drove past, working on a piece of furniture in the open air. He looked up when her truck went by, their eyes meeting for a brief second. He nodded once, no smile, no wave, just acknowledgement. Then he went back to work. Tayana parked at the general store and sat in her truck for a long time, staring at nothing. That simple nod had hurt more than anger would have, because it meant Tiger had meant what he said. He wasn't chasing her, wasn't begging her to come back. He'd laid out who he was, and now he was letting her decide. The ball was completely in her court, and Tayana realized with sudden, painful clarity that she had no idea what to do with it. That night, she got the email she'd been waiting for. Federal prosecutors wanted to meet. They had enough evidence from Dominique to move forward with charges, but Tayana's testimony would make the case ironclad. They were offering to meet her anywhere, anytime, on her terms. She had a choice to make: stay hidden forever, letting Gary potentially escape the harshest consequences, or go back, face him in court, and destroy him completely. Tayana stared at the email for hours. Then she started typing a response. But before she could send it, she thought about Tiger's words. Going back isn't weakness. Running away and staying away forever, that's weakness. He was right. She'd been running for months. And while running had given her time to heal, it hadn't given her closure. hadn't given her justice, hadn't given her back the power Gary had stolen. If she wanted to truly move forward, she had to face this. Tayana finished her email to the prosecutors. "I'll testify, but I do it my way, in my time. I'll contact you when I'm ready with my full statement and evidence. Don't try to find me before then." She hit send. Then she opened a new email to Tiger. Stared at the blank screen for 20 minutes. Finally typed, "I'm sorry for what I said. You didn't deserve that. You've been nothing but honest with me, and I threw it in your face because I was scared. I don't know if I'm ready for what you're offering, but I want you to know that you were right about me needing to face things instead of running. I'm going back to testify. I'm going to destroy the man who destroyed me. And if I survive that with any part of myself intact, maybe I'll be brave enough to trust again. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Tayana." She sent it before she could reconsider. Tiger's response came 2 hours later. "Good luck. You'll be amazing in that courtroom. You always are when you're fighting for what's right. And Tayana, you're already brave enough. You just don't see it yet." Tayana read the message 3 times, something warm and painful settling in her chest. Then she shut her laptop and started preparing, because in 2 weeks she was going back to the city, back to face Gary, back to the courtroom where she'd spent years destroying liars, and this time she'd be destroying the biggest liar she'd ever known. Gary Green had no idea what was coming for him, but he was about to find out that the woman he'd betrayed wasn't gone. She'd just been gathering her strength, and now she was coming back as something far more dangerous than the woman he'd destroyed, a survivor with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Chapter 9. The reckoning begins. Tayana walked into the federal courthouse like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. She'd been gone for 5 months. In that time, she'd hidden in the mountains, rebuilt herself from broken pieces, and transformed her pain into something colder and sharper than rage. Strategy. The media circus outside the courthouse was exactly what she'd expected. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, people with signs supporting both sides of the case. Dominique's divorce from Gary had become a national story, and Tayana's sudden reappearance as the missing second wife had made it even bigger. But Tayana walked through the chaos without responding to a single question, her head high, her expression unreadable. She'd worn her most powerful suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the kind of outfit that screamed competence and control. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek style that showed her face clearly. Let them see her. Let Gary see her. Let everyone see that she wasn't hiding anymore. Federal prosecutors met her at a private entrance, rushing her through security to a conference room where they'd been preparing for weeks. "Ms. Davis," the lead prosecutor said, extending her hand. "I'm Amanda Chen. Thank you for coming forward." Tayana shook her hand firmly. "I'm here to ensure Gary Green faces every consequence he's been running from. What do you need from me?" Over the next 4 hours, Tayana walked the prosecution team through everything. Her marriage to Gary, the timeline of their relationship, evidence she'd been collecting, emails where Gary had coached her on structuring financial documents, text messages revealing his awareness of his marriage to Dominique, records showing how he'd used both women to build his business empire. The prosecutors were stunned by how organized she was. "Ms. Davis, this is incredibly thorough," Amanda said, scrolling through the encrypted files Tayana had provided. "How long have you been preparing this?" "Since the day I saw that Instagram post." Tayana's voice was calm. "I'm an attorney. Building airtight cases is what I do, and I've had 5 months to build this one. And you're prepared to testify in open court, face cross-examination from his defense team?" "I've spent my career destroying people who lie on the stand," Tayana said simply. "I know every trick they'll try, and none of it will work." Amanda smiled slightly. "I believe you." The trial started the following week. The courtroom was packed. Media, legal observers, people who'd followed the case obsessively. Dominique sat in the front row, perfectly composed, watching everything with sharp eyes. When Tayana entered to take the stand, the room went absolutely silent. She looked directly at Gary for the first time in 5 months. He sat at the defense table looking diminished, desperate. His expensive suit couldn't hide how much weight he'd lost. His eyes were hollow. He looked destroyed. Good. Tayana was sworn in and took her seat, her posture perfect, her expression neutral. Amanda Chen began the examination. "Ms. Davis, can you please state your relationship to the defendant?" "I was married to Gary Green for 3 years, from our wedding until I discovered he was committing bigamy." "And how did you discover this?" "I saw an Instagram post showing Gary marrying another woman, Dominique Laurent, while he was still married to me." Tayana's voice was steady, professional. "The post indicated they'd been in a relationship for 5 years, which meant he'd been with her for 2 years before he ever proposed to me. What was your reaction?" "Shock, then calculation. I'm an attorney. I immediately recognized this wasn't just betrayal. It was federal crime, marriage fraud, tax evasion, perjury on official documents." Tayana looked directly at the jury. "So I began documenting everything." For the next 3 hours, Tayana methodically destroyed Gary's entire defense. She presented emails where Gary had discussed structuring their marriage to benefit his business dealings, text messages where he'd lied about his whereabouts, claiming business trips when he was actually with Dominique, financial records showing how he'd used both marriages to commit tax fraud, claiming benefits he wasn't entitled to. Every piece of evidence was time-stamped, verified, unimpeachable. Gary's defense attorney tried to rattle her during cross-examination. "Ms. Davis, isn't it true that you're testifying out of revenge, that you're a scorned woman trying to destroy the man who left you?" Tayana looked at the attorney with the same expression she'd used countless times to dismantle opposing counsel. "I'm testifying because Gary Green committed multiple federal crimes and used me as an unwitting accomplice. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. And if you'd actually read the evidence I've presented, you'd understand the difference." The attorney tried again. "You claim you had no knowledge of his marriage to Ms. Laurent, but isn't it possible you knew and chose to ignore it?" "No, it's not possible, because if I'd known, I would have done exactly what I'm doing right now, presented every shred of evidence to ensure he faced prosecution." Tayana's voice was ice cold. "I built my career on destroying people who lied to me. Gary Green made the mistake of thinking I'd protect him when I discovered his lies. Instead, I spent 5 months building a case so thorough that his only option was to plead guilty or face certain conviction." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The defense attorney looked rattled. "No further questions," he muttered. Over the next 2 days, Dominique testified as well. Her testimony was equally devastating, corroborating everything Tayana had said and adding additional evidence of Gary's financial crimes. The 2 women didn't speak during breaks, but they exchanged looks, warrior recognition. 2 generals who'd joined forces to destroy a common enemy. On the 4th day, Gary's defense team tried to have him testify in his own defense. It was a disaster. Under Amanda Chen's precise questioning, Gary contradicted himself repeatedly, lied about things the prosecution had already disproved, tried to paint himself as a victim of circumstance. The jury wasn't buying it. Tayana watched from the gallery as Gary fell apart on the stand, and she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just cold certainty that justice was being served. Closing arguments came on the 5th day. Amanda Chen was brilliant, methodical, tying together every piece of evidence into an unbreakable narrative. "Gary Green didn't make mistakes," Amanda told the jury. "He made calculated choices to defraud 2 women, the federal government, and multiple financial institutions. He committed bigamy. He lied on tax documents. He used his marriages as tools for financial gain. And he did it all while making both women believe they were loved, cherished, special." She paused, letting that sink in. Tayana Davis and Dominique Laurent are here today not as scorned women seeking revenge, but as survivors of systematic fraud who had the courage to come forward and demand accountability. The evidence they've provided is overwhelming, undeniable, and proves beyond any reasonable doubt that Gary Green is guilty on all counts. The defense's closing argument was weak, grasping at straws that didn't exist. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty on all 12 counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Gary was remanded into custody immediately. As federal marshals led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at Tayana one last time. She held his gaze steadily, her expression giving nothing away. Then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded both Tayana and Dominique. For once, Dominique addressed them directly. "This case was never about 2 women fighting over a man," she said, her voice carrying authority. "It was about holding someone accountable for systematic fraud and abuse. Tayana Davis is one of the strongest people I've ever met. She could have stayed hidden. Instead, she came back to ensure justice was served. That's not revenge. That's courage." Tayana stepped forward. "I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor, and I want any woman watching this to understand something. When someone betrays you, when someone lies to you, when someone uses you, you have the power to fight back, legally, strategically, and you can win." The cameras flashed. Questions shouted. But Tayana was done talking. She walked away from the courthouse, Dominique beside her, 2 women who'd been destroyed by the same man and had rebuilt themselves into something he could never touch again. Later that evening, Tayana sat in a hotel room, finally alone. Her phone had been blowing up with messages, colleagues congratulating her, friends saying they'd always known she was strong, offers from law firms wanting to hire her. But the message she kept reading was from Tiger. "Watch the news coverage. You were incredible. Proud of you for facing it. Hope you find what you're looking for now that it's over." Tayana stared at that message for a long time. The trial was over. Gary would be sentenced to prison. Justice had been served. So why did she still feel empty? Because revenge wasn't the same as healing, and destroying Gary hadn't filled the hole his betrayal had left in her life. Tayana pulled up her email and started typing. "Tiger, I did what I came here to do. Gary's been convicted. He'll spend years in prison. I won. But it doesn't feel like I thought it would. I thought justice would make me whole again. Instead, I just feel tired. I think I'm ready to come back to the mountains now. Not to hide, but to build the life I actually want. If you're still there when I get back, maybe we can talk about what that looks like. No promises, just possibility. Tayana." She sent it before she could overthink. Tiger's response came 20 minutes later. "The mountains haven't gone anywhere. Neither have I. Come back when you're ready. I'll be here." Tayana closed her laptop and looked out at the city lights, the city she'd once called home, the city where she'd built a career, the city where Gary had destroyed her. She was done with this place. Tomorrow she'd drive back to Oregon, back to the mountains, back to the quiet workshop where a man who'd never lied to her was building furniture and waiting to see if she'd be brave enough to trust again. She didn't know if she was ready, but she was willing to try, and for now, that was enough. Chapter 10. The Wedding. 1 year after Gary Green's conviction, Tayana Davis stood in a mountain clearing wearing an ivory dress that moved like water in the breeze, wildflowers woven through her hair by Dominique's expert hands that morning. The clearing was perfect, surrounded by towering pines, overlooking a valley that stretched for miles, the kind of view that made you understand why people believed in something bigger than themselves. 50 guests sat in chairs Tiger had built himself, each one carved with small details that made them unique. Dominique sat in the front row, wearing a deep burgundy dress, smiling with genuine warmth. She'd become one of Tayana's closest friends over the past year, not because of their shared trauma, but because they'd built something new together. A legal advocacy firm for women escaping fraud and abuse. The firm was thriving, offices in 3 states, making real difference. Tayana's mother sat beside Dominique, wiping tears already. They'd reconciled after Tayana came back from the mountains, her mother finally understanding that strength sometimes looked like disappearing and rebuilding yourself from scratch. But Tayana's eyes were locked on Tiger Washington, standing at an altar he'd built from reclaimed wood, wearing a tailored suit that somehow still looked like him, solid, real, unpretentious. The past year hadn't been easy. Tayana had come back to the mountains immediately after the trial, but trust didn't rebuild overnight. She and Tiger had spent months in careful conversation, setting boundaries, testing whether this thing between them could survive outside the intensity of crisis. There had been setbacks, moments when Tayana's walls went up, and Tiger had to decide whether to push through or give her space. Times when Tiger's patience wore thin, and they'd had actual fights about whether Tayana would ever fully trust him. But they'd worked through it, slowly, honestly, building something real instead of something fast. Tiger had supported her when she and Dominique launched the firm, had driven 6 hours to be at her side during Gary's sentencing hearing when he received 18 years in federal prison, had held her on the nights when panic attacks made her question everything, and Tayana had learned to let him, had learned that being vulnerable wasn't the same as being weak, that trusting someone didn't mean you were stupid. It meant you were brave enough to risk being hurt again because the alternative was living alone forever. The officiant, a friend from town who'd gotten ordained specifically for this, began speaking, but Tayana barely heard the words. She was too focused on Tiger's eyes, steady and calm and completely certain. When it came time for vows, Tiger spoke first. Tayana, when you first showed up in these mountains, you were running from something that almost destroyed you. I watched you survive, rebuild, become even stronger than you were before. His voice was quiet but carried across the clearing. You taught me that broken things can be remade into something better. That survival is its own kind of victory. That love doesn't have to be performance. It can just be two people choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. He took her hands. I don't promise to be perfect. I promise to be honest. I don't promise to never hurt you. We're human, we'll hurt each other sometimes. But I promise that when we do, we'll face it together instead of running. I promise to build a life with you where trust isn't a risk, it's a foundation. And I promise to love you not despite your scars, but because your scars prove you're strong enough to survive anything. Tayana's throat tightened. She squeezed his hands and began her own vows. Tiger, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. The ability to believe in honest love. You never demanded trust. You earned it. Day after day, choice after choice, you showed me that not everyone lies, that some people actually mean what they say. Her voice wavered slightly. I spent months terrified that you'd turn out to be another version of the man who destroyed me. But you never did. You just kept being exactly who you are. Steady, real, patient. She took a shaky breath. I can't promise I'll never be scared. I can't promise I won't have moments where old fears make me doubt. But I can promise that I'll fight through those fears instead of running from them. I promise to build an empire of love with you, not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. And I promise to trust you with my whole heart, because you've proven over and over that you'll protect it. Tiger pulled her closer, and Tayana saw tears in his eyes, the first time she'd ever seen him cry. The officiant pronounced them married. Tiger kissed her like she was precious, like she was everything, and the guests erupted in applause and cheers. But Tayana was only dimly aware of the celebration, because as she kissed her husband, her real husband, built on truth instead of lies, she felt something shift inside her. The last piece of Gary's destruction finally crumbling to dust. She was free. The reception was everything Tayana had wanted. Simple, joyful, filled with people who genuinely cared. Dominique gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Tayana's mother welcomed Tiger into the family with a warmth that felt like healing. As sunset painted the mountains gold and purple, Tayana slipped away from the crowd for a moment, walking to the edge of the clearing where she could see the whole valley spread below. Tiger found her there. Hiding from your own wedding, he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just taking a moment. Tayana leaned back against him. thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago. Better different or worse different? Better, definitely better. She turned in his arms to face him. A year ago, I was sitting in a courtroom watching my ex-husband get convicted. I thought that would be my happy ending, revenge, justice, watching him lose everything. But it wasn't. It was satisfying, but it wasn't happiness. Tayana touched his face gently. This is happiness. Building something real with you. The firm with Dominique. The life we're creating. That's the victory, not destroying him. Building something he could never touch. Tiger smiled. You're pretty incredible, you know that? I learned from watching you rebuild after your life fell apart. Tayana kissed him softly. You showed me what real strength looks like. They stood there as the sun sank lower, wrapped in each other, the celebration continuing behind them. Tayana thought about Gary Green one last time. He was in federal prison, serving year 3 of an 18-year sentence. His businesses were gone, his reputation destroyed, his freedom taken. But Tayana wasn't thinking about him with satisfaction or revenge, just with the distant acknowledgement of someone who'd survived a storm and moved on to sunnier days. Gary Green no longer defined her story. He was just a chapter she'd survived, a lesson learned, a scar that proved she was strong enough to heal and love again. Behind the trees at the far edge of the clearing, too distant for any guest to notice, a man stood watching the celebration through binoculars. He'd been released from prison 2 days ago on a temporary compassionate release to attend his mother's funeral, and he'd used the time to track down one last piece of information. Gary Green watched Tayana laugh in her husband's arms, watched her dance with Dominique, watched her build the life she deserved, the life he'd destroyed his chance at having. Tears streamed down his face, but they weren't tears of love. They were tears of finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd lost. Not just Tayana, not just Dominique, but the person he could have been if he'd chosen honesty instead of lies. His federal escort called out, "Time to go, Green. Funeral's over. Back to the facility." Gary lowered the binoculars, took one last look at the celebration, and walked away. Back to prison. Back to 16 more years of consequences. Tayana never saw him. She was too focused on her future to notice the ghost of her past lurking in the trees. As the sun set completely, Tiger swept Tayana into a dance, right there at the edge of the clearing. No music, just the sound of wind through pines and distant laughter from their guests. "Ready to start forever?" Tiger asked, spinning her gently. Tayana smiled, radiant, free, genuinely happy. "I've been ready since the day you rebuilt my porch and didn't ask a single question about why I was hiding." "Best porch I ever built," Tiger said. "Led me to the best thing in my life." They danced as stars began appearing overhead, two people who'd been broken by betrayal and rebuilt themselves into something stronger together. And somewhere behind them, Gary Green's prison transport pulled away, carrying him back to a cell, while Tayana danced under the stars with the man who'd shown her that love could be honest, real, and worth the risk. Gary Green had taught her what betrayal looked like. Tiger Washington had taught her what love actually was. And Tayana Davis had taught herself that survival wasn't just about enduring. It was about building something beautiful from the wreckage. As the last light faded and the celebration continued into the night, Tayana whispered against Tiger's chest, "Thank you for waiting for me to be ready." "Thank you for being brave enough to try again," Tiger whispered back. And in that moment, surrounded by mountains and stars and people who loved them, Tayana finally let go of every last piece of pain Gary had left behind. She was free. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And that was the greatest revenge of all, not destroying the person who hurt you, but building a life so beautiful they could never touch it again.